Good sleep is everything. That's why Ollie's Science Back Support is made with a blend of melatonin and L-theanine for both kiddos and grown-ups. So when your mind won't switch off, you've got something that can help. Your racing thoughts and restless nights won't stand a chance. Find Ollie Sleep Solutions for the whole family at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey. And how are we today, Lauren? We're actually recording this on April 15th, Tax Day.
Oh.
How is that at the Hersey household? Stressful or what goes on?
Always stressful when you have a small business. But, I mean, what are you going to do? The only thing's inevitable are death and taxes, right?
Well,
So we roll with it. As long as we have money to go to Disney and get the merch, then we are A-okay.
well, there we go. Okay, that's an interesting mindset. Today, on the other hand, we didn't get a tax cut. We got a Nancy cut. Nancy actually went in for carpal tunnel surgery today.
How's Miss Nancy doing?
Well, she has one orange hand. That's the thing. You're after you have carpal tunnel surgery, you're not allowed to wash your hand for 2 weeks while it heals up. Yes, in fact, if you take a shower, that sort of thing, you have to put a rubber glove on. So she's part sun-kissed orange right now. But honestly, Lauren, I have had meals that took longer after I ordered them to come out of the kitchen than it took for Nancy to have the surgery. They zip.
Yeah, I was surprised to see her setting up your new computer.
Yeah, I am as well. But anyway, she came through with flying colors. She's home now. And speaking of which, this is the first show we're recording on our brand new MacBook Air, which I have no idea how to use. So when this show blows up, folks, it's my fault. Just saying. Okay?
Well, I mean, speaking of the show, we got a lot to cover, so we'll get to it.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're looking at Disney tests the Muppets comeback in a surprising new way.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to dig into a viral duck trend that is making its way into the parks. And just in time for May the 4th, we're going to be breaking down the merch drops. And in today's feature, Jim is going to talk about the billion-dollar gamble that turned Star Wars merch into one of the most lucrative empires in the entertainment history. But before we get to that, we do want to say thank you for listening. And if you're enjoying the show and want us to keep doing what we're doing over here, we're coming up on 100 episodes. So please consider leaving a rating or review. That's really the best way to support the podcast. And if you want more, you can always become a paid member of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network over on Patreon for ad-free shows and bonus episodes across the network. All right, Jim, on that note, let's thank our sponsor.
That we will. And this episode of I Want That Too is brought to you by our friends at unlockmagic.com, the go-to place for some of the best deals on theme park tickets. If a Disney or Universal trip is anywhere on your radar in 2026, Unlock Magic helps you lock in great ticket prices without the stress, all handled by people who really know the parks, more importantly, know how to save you money. So, if you started to think, okay, maybe this is the year we finally go, head to unlockmagic.com to grab the best ticket deals and make that future trip just a little more magical. Okay, so we started by talking about a Muppets comeback, yes?
Yes, and I'm there was a lot with this story, but let's just kick it back to last week. I saw in the news that Disney was going to be trying something new with their Muppets merch. So they were going to be launching an exclusive collection on TikTok Shop first before it even hit the Disney store. And this was so surprising to me that I did a TikTok TikTok video, and I even posted it on the Jim Hill Media Facebook and Instagram, or maybe just Instagram. Anyways, but it kind of blew up. As it stands right now, it has like 23,000 views because I wanted to get people's perspective and where Disney's head was at launching a merch line exclusive to TikTok Shop first. Did you see this?
I did not, but given what Disney has been doing lately, I mean, for example, I think you and I talked previously about that Disneyland handcrafted thing that Leslie Iwerks did, that they not only launched on Disney Plus as a documentary, but they put the entire thing on YouTube. I just feel like Disney is moving into different spaces in search of a bigger audience. And, how much bigger an audience could there be than TikTok?
Right. And so this was their first drop, and it came out, I think, 5 days. It came out on the 10th to the 14th exclusively on TikTok, and then it was going to be dropped on the Disney Store around April 15th, which is today. Being honest with you, Jim, I think it was a little messy. So the line included, this was plush. There was Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, Gonzo, Animal, Swedish Chef, and they said that there was going to be this line of like plush keychains, and the plush did make it on TikTok Shop, but not at the exact time when they said that it was going to. And then we never got the keychains, and we had people chiming in from, Australia and Europe. And so some people said that they were available in the Disney Store outlets, like physical locations, but they did not make it onto the TikTok Shop. And at first, it was kind of interesting because they must have not had a setting configured correctly, so you could see in real time how many people were buying each one of the plushies. So it was fascinating to watch and witness. But the thing that I thought was really fascinating that came out, I think maybe a day after this line dropped, and I feel like maybe it was on WDW News Today. I can't remember where I saw it, but they said that this was the first Muppets plush line that was dropped in a decade. So, of course, I had to, dig into that because I'm like, I remember seeing Muppets, stuff all the time, but maybe not plush specifically. So just to kind of, dial that in a little bit, more accurately, I think that this was the first major Disney Store specific led plush collection since around 2014, which was, the Muppets Most Wanted era. And, I mean, do you think, Jim, with timing that they're just gearing up for the Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets, or they just had the Muppet show? What do you think is going on with the timing?
Well, I don't know if you saw earlier this week, they had honestly one of the odder press events in a while. It was a press event to tell you about when there'd be a press event. They revealed what the first song was going to be on the Rock and Roller Coaster with the Muppets, but they also mentioned that I want to say it's on April 26th that they're going to have a full-blown press conference where they will then reveal all of the songs that will be played on this attraction, plus reveal the actual opening date, which now evidently people who are reading the tea leaves, they're looking to have this thing open for Memorial Day of this year. That
would make sense with the timing. And I did see that they were dropping a new song each day leading up to, I think is it the 16th that we're going to get all the, at least the songs, and they're putting them on Disney's site. So, I mean, the timing feels right. I love the renewed energy and excitement around the Muppets, though.
No. I mean, don't get me wrong. That I have been a Muppet fan forever. All right. More to the point, there was nobody more thrilled back in August of '89 when it was first announced that Disney was going to acquire the Muppets. And, I've been, following Disney's history with this set of characters forever. So it is interesting, sort of this going on at the same time that the change over to Muppet, Rock and Roller Coaster with Muppet is going on. I mean, if anything that raises the profile of the Muppets, that much said, though, I don't know if you saw any of the stuff they were giving away at the press event. But
no, what were they giving away?
Well, again, you have to understand, us reporters, we like swag, all right? And they had sort of a tie-dyed bag with the, that they gave away to the folks who came out to the press event, which suggested that when you finally exit the ride and go into that dedicated gift shop, which, by the way, Muppet Vision 3D never had a dedicated gift shop. You had to walk across the street, and more often than not, people missed it. In spite of the fact that, they put giant Kermit statues in front of the door. But people come right off of this thing and go into evidently a space with a plethora of new Muppet merch. So I guess that's a long way to say that Lauren will be writing and talking extensively about Rock and Roller Coaster with Muppet merch in the coming months, because there's a lot of stuff coming.
So, and speaking of trends, another trend that we're digging into is the duck trend that's showing up in the theme parks. So I was we were in Virginia Beach this weekend for my daughter's final cheer competition for nationals. And one of the things that have been popping up at the cheer competitions and baseball games and are these little, there's just ducks. There's ducks everywhere. Big ducks, little ducks, all kinds of ducks. And then as I was on the way home in the 8-hour drive that felt like 1,800 hours, it just felt like it took forever to get home.
Okay.
I was doing some Googling and I saw that there was a new duck line that was dropped at Disney. So I wanted to dig into this. And also, just a couple months ago, my son's girlfriend was in the park and she brought Hunter back a T-shirt that had all these Disney ducks. So I had to go down the scroll hole and figure out, what this was all about. Jim, do you know what I'm talking about with the ducks?
I do. And first, you lay it out. You've done a wonderful job here with the research. And then we're going to talk about how the Disney Cruise Line feels about Disney ducks.
Ooh, okay. So, but I guess let's go back before we can go forward. So the modern duck craze really took off with Jeep ducking, aka Duck Duck Jeep, which began in 2020 in Ontario, Canada. And I mean, the Jeep people are just like the Disney people, they're their own community. So this was a woman named Alice in Parliament, and she started leaving these little rubber ducks on Jeeps as just a random act of kindness during the pandemic. And then from what I understand, it went viral pretty fast. So then the Jeep owners, they started collecting all these ducks and displaying them and then training them. And now it's a full-blown trend. And Disney loves jumping in on a good trend, like the Labubu's and the trading cards and all of that. So from there, from what I understand, it jumped into youth athletics, travel culture, anywhere that people are gathering in groups. And I think it's also nice because it's a cheap, thing that people can get involved with, hiding the ducks, trading the ducks. So that pin trading kind of culture, but less expensive. So then January is when I think we saw it crop up first at Disney. And the first line of little duckies, they were actually rubber plastic ducks and pretty, I think, inexpensive, maybe $5. I see Elsa, Maleficent, Donald, Mickey, Ariel, and then the new line of ducks, which are extremely cute. These are like little plushy keychains, and they have Angel and Stitch and Mickey and Minnie, and these are $11.99. So if these continue to be as popular as, what we think that they are or will be, I think we're going to start seeing even more little duckies. So, Jim, what's going on with Disney and the cruise line and the ducks? Like, that feels like a natural, like a match made in heaven.
Well, in theory, yes. Okay. What's interesting is the Disney Cruise Line does not necessarily have a problem with the ducks. If you know how on cruises people will, for example, Nancy, when she does the Hallmark cruises, people will hang a stocking on outside their door and people will put things in them. And I want to say on normal cruises, this happens as well. People will put a little thing, they'll decorate their door, they'll put a little basket outside, people will put tchotchkes in it. And so just want to stress here, Disney doesn't have a problem with ducks in the baskets by the door or hanging off the door or the stocking by the door. What Disney had an issue with was the ducks being hidden around the ship. This is the thing. It's you have to remember, yes, a Disney Cruise Line, the magic, the wonder, the destiny, all of them, yes, they are a resort on the water, but they are also an ocean-going vessel that, has all sorts of safety procedures and that sort of thing. And the fear was that somebody was going to put a duck, hide it, next to, say, a door that had to close, suddenly if the ship experienced an emergency or that sort of thing. So the ships are like, please, no, don't hide the ducks. You can bring the ducks to the boat. You can give them to people. Don't hide them on the boats. And it's kind of sort of the same bend on, I don't know if you ever heard about geocaching at the Disney park.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. Disney, the Disney parks frowns big time on geocaching inside of the Disney parks because, it's just the notion of, if somebody if a cast member finds, a little box, magnetically glued to the bottom of a stairway, they don't go, oh, how cute, geocaching. They call security, who then calls the bomb squad. Again, it's different because it's a safety concern, not a cool collectible concern.
I can understand that. Like last time we were at the park, we were sitting on a bench and my little guy found a little bag and it had a little note and a little figure in it. It's just like, I think people leave things like that around to just spread a little bit of happiness and kindness and community. But I could see how that could be questionable for Disney.
That's all lovely. But at the same time, there's somebody who's, got an office at Disney who says, little bag, with something found inside of it. And it's like, please let it not be anthrax. But anyway, all right.
Modern day challenges.
There we go. Modern day. And speaking of days, we are coming up on Star Wars Day, right?
Yeah. So coming up on May the 4th, and I'm getting, emails and messages and, all kinds of stuff with the merch that's coming out. And you're going to have to help me with Jim with this story because I am not the biggest Star Wars person. So if I butcher any of this, you let me know.
Okay.
But the cool thing, like I'm seeing a real big trend with Disney right now. Just like they're dropping the rock and roller coaster songs one a day, or they're putting out a pin one a week. Like they want you to keep coming back and engaging with them. So this is no different for May the 4th. They started rolling out the merch for Star Wars Day on March 26th. And that's when we got to see the May the 4th logo and that type of merch. And then April 10th, so last week's drop was Endor. And then this week, it's all about the Stormtroopers. Next week, we're getting jerseys. And then, help me out, Jim. What's this last one for May? Pod racing?
from Phantom Menace. So, that's how Anakin Skywalker earned his freedom. Very big deal of the Star Wars universe. In fact, there was one recent iteration of the Star Tours ride where you literally went around the Jabba the Hutt's pod race track in Tatooine. No, very big deal, part of it.
So it's a big deal because I'm wondering, I was like, well, what is pod racing and why is that the last drop before actually like May the 4th? So that makes a lot more sense. And something else that kind of ties to our first story with them dropping this merch early on the TikTok shop. So on the Disney Parks blog, there's a little call out here that says, pro tip, wanting to see and shop the May 4th logo collection even sooner in person, guests attending the separately ticketed event, Disneyland After Dark Star Wars Night on April 28th and April 30th, will have access to shop select items from the collection. So if you want it early or you want it guaranteed, you got to buy the special, ticketed event.
Well, there we go. It's what this reminds me of for the D23 Expo. If you buy the tickets for the sorcerer level, you actually can get into the store there. I want to say the Thursday before the event begins on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In fact, it was always interesting on Thursdays to watch these people walking back to their hotels loaded down with all of the merch that they had bought at the D23 Expo store, which they were going back to their hotel rooms to list on eBay.
Right. And I remember getting there and going to like the D23 store and there being like one Spirit jersey and like a half a pin or something left. And that was just on the first day on Friday. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, that is the reality of, these sorts of events. I mean, Disney, I know we've talked about this on the show. I mean, previously about, for example, do you remember when they announced that they were closing Splash Mountain, that they were going to be building Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and there were literally those photographs of people carrying like 10 Brer Fox and Brer Bear plushes out of the park, because this thing was going to be closing, which meant that there was going to be a market for merch related to Splash, and that they were, buying as many as they were allowed to, and then taking them home to list them. So, this is the interesting thing. Disney recognizes that this is in fact part of, the fan community. These speculators, so to speak. Though I think you were mentioning recently here on the show that they had changed the return policy.
Yeah, well, for the Character Warehouse property control.
There we go.
They weren't letting folks return anything anymore because people were stocking up on stuff and then returning what they couldn't sell in a given period of time.
So there you go.
So something odd with this collection that I am wondering, have you ever been to the parks on May 4th?
I have not. And I have friends who, of course, love Star Wars, who, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's just sort of like they love being there because they're with other people who are just enormous Star Wars fans, and they love that they have a place like Black Spire Outpost and, an Oga's Cantina where they can go out and hang out with people just like themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. But so my question is, they're doing this, these drops weekly from March 26th to May 1st. And it says that if you want the actual May the 4th collection to shop it early on the 28th and 30th, well, I'm looking right now at the Disney store, and I mean, there's all the Endor stuff, but there's also, hoodies and t-shirts and magic bands and hats with the May the 4th branding. Are they saying that there's going to be, I was here on this day merch that you could get on the 28th and 30th of April, or are they just basically trying to get people to buy these separately ticketed events to buy what's already on the Disney store?
I want to say that the Disneyland After Dark event is very good about, that sort of merch, to the effect of the, merch that hum brags that you were there.
Okay.
And in fact, it's so funny you bring this up because whenever I travel out to California, I try to bring Nancy back a sleep shirt, from that trip. And when Shul and I were walking through Disneyland last month, we were recording our new show for Patreon, there were hundreds of people wearing the 2026 St. Patrick's Day Disneyland shirt. And I had this fascinating moment where Shul and I are walking out of the park and said, hang on, I got to get Nancy her sleep shirt. So I walk into the Emporium and I step up to a cast member and they're like, oh, no, we don't have that here. You might want to try across the street at the Disney Clothiers. And so I walk over to the Disney Clothiers and the Disney Clothiers person literally said, oh, no, we don't have this here. You might want to try across the street at the Emporium. And then when I explained that, well, no, they sent me here and said, oh, dang. And they grabbed the phone and they called their main merchandise person. And the main merchandise person said, no, the scary thing is those are things that people bought online before they came to the park.
Oh.
That they were available last month. People bought them, had them for their trip here. We were not selling that. And, and it said, and you're the 100th call I've gotten today about them. So, they could have sold them hand over fist, but no, they weren't actually in the park.
All right. So I'm wondering also if you're looking at these photos about these popcorn buckets and sippers that are coming specifically to Disneyland. They're not at Disney World yet. Like, are they getting these because they actually have a Star Wars themed night? Do you think they'll come to Disney World? They're impressive, I have to say. So I'm going to try my best to describe them here. This first one, I'm assuming, is the Salvage Protocol droid bucket, but doesn't it kind of just look like C-3PO?
It does.
Like the light up eyes?
There we go. But again, C-3PO is a protocol droid, so you technically you're correct.
But is that like C-3PO, or is that just are there a bunch of them?
You have to be very careful in the Star Wars space because again, if we definitively say it's C-3PO, 1,000 Star Wars fans will descend on us and explain why we are wrong. So let's just say
we're wrong. I don't know. And then is it Tauntaun? It's a Tauntaun bucket?
There we go. Well, a Tauntaun, on the other hand, just the notion of eating food out of a Tauntaun, again, I remember what Han Solo said on, when he sliced one open to save Luke in Empire. It's like, oof, I thought they smelled bad on the outside. I'm not eating anything that comes out of a Tauntaun.
Okay, what about a Bantha? Would you drink something that came out of a Bantha? This thing looks like an ox. Is that right?
When I got up this morning, I did not think these would be the questions I'd be answering mid-afternoon. All right. I guess if it's not blue milk, yes, I will drink out of a Bantha.
Okay. And then the big one, I'm assuming it's the big one. You tell me, Jim, because it's not dropping until May the 4th, is Jabba's Sail Barge Bucket. No idea what that is.
Again, that is from Return of the Jedi. That's the big action set piece for the first 25 minutes of. I mean, you don't remember the moment where Han Solo is about to be sacrificed into the Sarlacc pit. Luke comes to his rescue. You don't remember that at all?
Not ringing a bell, Jim. I'm sorry. Right. Listen, I love Disney and I've watched the new Star Wars, but the classic ones I'm going to have to revisit. I don't know that I was paying enough attention.
All right.
But Jim knows you know a ton about Star Wars. So after the break, you're going to be giving us the history of Star Wars licensing deal with Disney?
Yeah, and more to the point, why 20th Century Fox executives made a deal that to this day is touted as one of the worst ever made in Hollywood history. But before we do that, there's this.
You tell yourself, No one wants your college-era band tees. But on Depop, people are searching for exactly what you've got. You once paid a small fortune for them at merch stands. Now, a teenager who calls them vintage will offer that same small fortune back. Sell them easily on Depop. Just snap a few photos and we'll take care of the rest. Who knew your questionable music taste would be a money-making machine? Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
There's no one like you, and there never will be.
From the producer Bohemian Rhapsody, there are many legends, but there is only one. Michael, rated PG-13, in theaters April 24.
And we're back. All right. So Lauren was just talking about Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And you got to remember that this year we also get Mandalorian Grogu, which opens in theaters May 22nd. And given that the Disney company has already sold a metric ton of Baby Grogu merch since the Mandalorian series debuted on Disney Plus back in November of 2019, well, this is why Lauren, when we were talking about doing today's show, she wanted to talk about Star Wars merch, which, by the way, since the franchise officially launched back in May of 1977, to date, Lauren, they have sold $40 billion worth of merch.
Wow, that's incredible. That number is higher than I even thought that it would be. 40 billion?
40 billion. And the interesting thing is, prior to the sale, remember, this was 2012, October, the Disney company paid $4 billion, 50 million. By the way, that 50 million, George Lucas insisted on that. That because Disney had paid in 2009 $4 billion for Marvel, and Lucas was like, you got to pay me more, just a little.
I did know that.
Yeah, just a little more, so I have bragging rights. But yes, here's the fascinating thing. Star Wars, again, was produced by 20th Century Fox, and when they were signing the contract with George Lucas. And remember, George not only directed Star Wars, he wrote it. And more to the point... His baby. And more to the point, just 2 years earlier, he had written and directed American Graffiti for Universal, which was the third highest grossing film for that entire year. And by the way, that was third behind The Exorcist and The Sting, two ginormous hit films. All right, so George was in this position with 20th Century Fox, the effect of, I just delivered a giant hit for Universal. I'm coming here with my next film. And George was totally within his right to the effect of, okay, I expect a bigger payday. And, and by the way, he had been paid by Universal $150,000 to write and direct American Graffiti. And so the folks at Fox are like, all right, realistically, what's he going to do? He's going to want $1 million. And we're going to counter with 500, and we'll settle somewhere in between. But what threw them off was that George came into the negotiation and said, well, tell you what, let's start. What I want is $500,000. But he says, but I'm going to waive $350,000 of that. But here's the deal. In exchange to just making the exact same amount I made on American Graffiti, $150,000. Because I'm willing to give up $350,000, here's what you're going to give me. You're going to give me the licensing rights, so I could then, after the fact, approach a toy company and maybe get some toys made. You're also going to give me the rights to make a sequel. And here's the thing, Laura. There were members of the board of directors at 20th Century Fox who were like, well, first of all, it's like, has he lost his mind? He was in a position. We were assuming he was going to ask for $1 million, and then we'd somehow figure get him down to 500. And so he opens a negotiator where we were going to start anyway, and then he gives up $350,000. $250,000. And the other thing is that he's asking for the rights to make the toys. And Lauren, here's the interesting thing about 20th Century Fox. This actually happened like 12 years earlier. They had made a big movie musical version of Dr. Dolittle. Came out, I want to say, in December 68. And it had over 200 toys, puzzles, books, action figures that looked like Rex Harrison, the actor who played Dr. Dolittle in the movie. And the movie bombed in such a big way, more to the point, none of the toys sold. So, 20th Century Fox lost over $20 million just on the toys. So the notion of, here's George Lucas coming through the door and saying, oh, by the way, I want the licensing, the rights to make toys. And they're like, you're an idiot, right? I mean, nobody makes money off of toys. Oh, my God, are you crazy? And then, but this is where it gets especially interesting, Lauren, because, they were like, oh, he wants the rights to the sequels. And it's like, well, do we want to give that up? And it's like, because you got to remember, 20th Century Fox is the studio that actually made the original Planet of the Apes. And by 1973, there were 5 Planet of the Apes movies. In fact, the final one, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, had come out in June of 73. And then the following year, they actually did a Planet of the Apes TV series for CBS. It wasn't all that successful. It only ran for, I want to say, from September to December of that year. But, and they were like, well, it's a sci-fi film, and we did make a bunch of sequels to Planet of the Apes. But on the other hand, if he wants to give us $350,000, who are we to say? So, Lauren, they agree to this deal. And that was the whole thing. George didn't really start looking for, a partner, for the toys. In fact, he went to all of these major companies that turned him down. Kenner was the only one who was willing to take a flyer on it. And the funniest thing is, do you want to know why the Star Wars action figures are as small as they are? Well, because Kenner was already making the Micronauts series, and the notion was, well, we already got an assembly line that makes figures this size. So, that's what we're willing to do here. And if you're willing to play ball, we'll make your stupid figures. So, and the rest is history. And speaking of history, when we get back from this break, we're going to actually talk about how Mary Poppins and the Sound of Music plays into the merchandising of Star Wars. It's a very weird story, which we'll get to in a sec. But first, this.
K-pop Demon Hunters Saja Boy's breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
This episode is brought to you by Ferrero. Soccer's biggest stage is approaching, and Ferrero is making it easy to go all in. Pick any 2 Ferrero brands from Kinder Bueno to Ferrero Rocher, and you could win the $1 million grand prize, plus an exciting range of daily and weekly prizes. Don't miss your shot. Official rules apply. Learn more at goallinandwin.com.
And we're back. Lauren, this is honestly one of my favorite stories related to the original Star Wars film, A New Hope. It's Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher are on the set of the movie, and they're struggling with the screenplay that George Lucas wrote for the movie, because it's filled with all of these words that nobody has ever said before in their life. Death Star, lightsaber, land speeder, the Force. And in fact, Harrison Ford, there's a famous thing that Harrison Ford at one point is really struggling with some dialogue that Han Solo has. And he turns to George and says, George, you can type this, but you can't say it. And it just talked about how the script was unsayable. And the way Lucas explained it to them. So, look, just read it. All right, first of all, let me explain the movie we're making here. We're making a movie for kids. This is a Disney movie. So like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or bippity boppity boo, you just say it. Just say it sincerely and clearly, and the kids will love it. All right. And that's the thing. So this is why George Lucas so desperately wanted the licensing rights to Star Wars, because, again, he was convinced, I'm making a Disney movie, and look at how much money Disney makes off of licensing toys that are related to its TV shows and movies. But we were just talking earlier about Dr. Dolittle and how 20th Century Fox, had this big movie musical and had created this whole line of toys. But here's the thing. That's what frightened the executives of 20th Century Fox away from ever making toys related to a movie that they were going to produce. But again, this all dates back to Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, which, Lauren, came out in theaters within 6 months of one another in late 1964, early 1965. And another thing to understand here, kind of key for how this story plays out later, is when My Fair Lady debuted on Broadway, it starred Rex Harrison as Professor Henry Higgins, and then Julie Andrews as Eliza Doolittle. And that's 1956. In fact, what is that? 70 years ago last month, it debuted on Broadway, was this enormous hit, ran for years. Jack Warner eventually acquires the movie rights to My Fair Lady, and he's going to produce it in the early 1960s. And Rex Harrison by then is an established movie star, so okay, absolutely, we'll get Rex to come back and play Henry Higgins. Julie Andrews was not a movie star yet. And Jack Warner, was like, well, I feel like I need a movie star to appear alongside of Rex Harrison. So he hires Audrey Hepburn to play Eliza Doolittle, which turned out to be a great thing for Walt Disney, because he was looking for somebody to play the title role in Mary Poppins. And Walt actually goes to New York, sees Julie Andrews in Camelot, where she's whistling up a storm on stage as Queen Guinevere, and it's like, hey, that's my Mary Poppins. And anyway, we jump ahead now, Lauren, to it's the spring of 1965. It's time for the Academy Awards, and My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins go head to head. And My Fair Lady wins Best Picture, they win Best Actor, they win Best Director, whereas Mary Poppins wins Best Actress, Best Song, Best Score, Best Visual Effects. And everybody in Hollywood is like, oh, that's how you do it. You do a family musical. And this then gets nailed absolutely into place when the movie version of Sound of Music comes out, again, starring Julie Andrews, and that makes more money than My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins combined. So everybody now decides, okay, that's how you do it. That, the way you make giant piles of money in Hollywood today is you make an elaborate family-friendly musical. And but where this got really interesting, Lauren, is that people in Hollywood suddenly got obsessed where it's like, well, but it's not enough that it be a family-friendly musical. It's got to be a family-friendly musical with either Rex Harrison or Julie Andrews, or ideally both. So here's the thing. First United Artists, they actually hire the Sherman Brothers. They hire the people who did the music for Mary Poppins. They even hire the people who did the choreography for Mary Poppins. And they're going to do Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And first they hire Dick Van Dyke with the notion of, and we'll get Julie Andrews to play his love interest in the movie. And we'll be the studio that's putting out you want to see Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews together again in a movie. Here they are, and it's got music by the same guys who did Mary Poppins, and it's a wonderful plan. Except Julie Andrews announces, "No, I don't want to play Truly Scrumptious. I'm going to go off to Universal, and I'm going to make Thoroughly Modern Millie with Mary Tyler Moore, who just finished doing the Dick Van Dyke Show on CBS, and Carol Channing, who just finished doing Hello, Dolly on Broadway." And so as kind of a fallback, what United Artists did is they hired Sally Ann Howes, who had actually followed Julie Andrews into the stage version of My Fair Lady. She'd been, an understudy as Eliza Doolittle and then took over the role. On the other hand, 20th Century Fox decides that they want to do Dr. Dolittle as a musical. And so they hire Rex Harrison. But now, because they're going to do what Jack Warner didn't do. They're going to put Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews in the same movie. And so the idea was that Julie Andrews was going to play the love interest in Dr. Dolittle. But again, same thing. They bring the project to Julie Andrews, and she's like, no, I'm going to go make another movie with the guy who directed The Sound of Music, director Robert Weiss. I'm going to go make Star, which is the life story of Gertrude Lawrence. And so that plan falls apart, and Rex Harrison gets so upset, he quits Dr. Dolittle. And so now 20th Century Fox says, well, who are we going to get to play Dr. Dolittle? And they're like, well, wait a minute. Hang on, maybe there's another way we could do this, because Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music co-starred with Christopher Plummer. He played Colonel Von Trapp. And so they go to Christopher Plummer and said, hey, how'd you like to play the lead in Dr. Dolittle? We'll pay you $300,000. And Christopher said, yes, absolutely. So he signs the contract, Lauren. And 10 days later, Rex Harrison calls 20th Century Fox and says, I changed my mind. I'll come back. I'll play Dr. Dolittle. And the folks at Fox are like, okay, Christopher Plummer is a movie star, but Rex Harrison is a really big movie star. And if we have him in the movie, we'll play in more theaters around the world. And so they literally go to Christopher Plummer and say, look, nothing personal. And by the way, you can keep the money. But we would like to bring Rex Harrison back into the project. And Christopher Plummer, for the rest of his life, talked about, that was my favorite role.
You don't have to do anything.
No, that's exactly. I got a giant check for not showing up for work. Why would you not like that? And more to the point, given how the movie turned out, I feel like I dodged a bullet. And that's the thing. Again, here's the genuinely scary part of the story, Lauren, that between, Julie Andrews' movie, The Star, which was made for 20th Century Fox, Dr. Dolittle, and Hello, Dolly with Barbra Streisand. Those films combined, between what it cost to develop them, to shoot them, and to promote them, combined over 3 years, lost $100 million. And they damn near took down 20th Century Fox. Though, what's interesting is just today, in fact, if you go to Disney Plus this month and you open the front page there, Hello, Dolly, the Barbra Streisand version, is literally on the front page. And for Disney fans, that's kind of a big deal, because if you know anything about Euro Disneyland, Main Street USA at that theme park, Eddie Sato, the gentleman who designed that, will flat out tell you that, when he was a little boy, his mom and dad took him to a tour of 20th Century Fox, and he, came through, stepped out of a corridor onto this giant 15-acre set that they built for Hello Dolly, which was turn of the century New York, and it just sort of blew his mind. These 5- and 6-story buildings and full-size trains and all that. And when Eddie was given the assignment to make Main Street USA for Disneyland Paris, it's like, that, I want to do what they did at 20th Century Fox. And the other thing, Lauren, and a little homework for folks out there, if you want a fun way to spend an afternoon, go to Disney Plus. Turn on the film, go halfway into it to when the parade passes by, which is the big, it's the very last number in the film before they go to the intermission. And Lauren, they shot this back when there was no CG. So what you're looking at are 5,000 really for real, extras lining the street. All right, and the USC marching band, and there's just this giant parade, and here's your assignment, folks. You're supposed to look through the crowd and see if you can find veteran Imagineer Tony Baxter, because Tony, when he was in college, this is July of 1967, for like 4 and 5 days on the back lot at 20th Century Fox. They had they hired all these extras, and Tony talked about, they gave me a bowler hat, they gave me a really warm wool coat, and we stood there all day and cheered for parades as they marched by. And yet he's in the movie. You just have to find him. But again, to bring this thing full circle, that's why the board of directors at 20th Century Fox, first of all, they wanted Mary Poppins money. They wanted what Walt Disney had with the merchandising of that movie, which is one of the reasons they made Dr. Dolittle. But when that lost $20 million for the studio, that was why when George Lucas came to them and said, hey, here, I'm giving you $350,000 back, give me the licensing, rights, they were like, absolutely. And it's like, and the next question was, so you've had a head injury lately? You were dropped as a child? Is there a reason you're making this incredibly poor business decision?
So did he have the licensing rights until Disney acquired?
Oh, yeah.
Lucas?
Yeah. I mean, for example, that's why, when it came to Empire, Lauren, he paid for that with his own money. It was just, I have this toy money. I don't have to go to the studio, and, I don't have to cut scenes. I don't have to change things because I'm paying for this. And, in turn, that's how, he had, he could make the Phantom Menace. So, he could make the, Attack of the Clones and all that. And by the time Disney bought, Lucasfilm again, October of 2012. George had already on his own made $20 billion. And in fact, that tells you how to bring us full circle to, you were talking about, why is Disney doing all of this merch stuff? Think about it. Disney has managed since, and Lauren, it's only been 14 years since Disney has owned Star Wars, Lucasfilm, and they've managed to make $20 billion on their own over that period. So, yeah, I mean, crazy.
Fascinating. I can't believe that you're just now telling this story because, I mean, this is a big one.
I love boardroom-related stories because these are they pride themselves on being really, really sharp businessmen. And, and just something like that, to stand outside of that now and look back that we gave that all up. We could have had all of this licensing money, or we could have owned the Star Wars sequels, but it was just, we don't want another Dr. Dolittle. Absolutely. No, let's go with this.
But I think that's how, Disney has gotten so good and so skilled at what they're doing today as far as merch goes, because you got to make some better decisions, to learn, right? And they're like, well, we'll never do that again.
Yeah, but at the same time, to go full circle to what you were talking about earlier today, when you think about the Muppets, but doing that through TikTok, or what we were talking about earlier with Disneyland Handcrafted through YouTube, I just feel, and just for example, just yesterday when you heard about that, 1,000 people were let go from Disney, and did you see where a lot of those folks came out of marketing?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think they led with marketing, but like, I think in Drew's article, didn't it say like the whole home division was scrapped? So like that was what got picked up, but like a lot of them were in digital marketing specifically, and I'm like, I just have lots of question marks.
Well, what's kind of interesting when you mentioned home division, to be specific, it was the home entertainment division.
Home entertainment.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you think about. We all used to buy the latest VHS or the latest DVD or the latest Blu-ray, and now what do? We watch it on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, right? 100%. Yeah, but anyways, on that note, I think it's time we close up shop for today. If you want to keep up with everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, follow us on social. And if you have questions or ideas for future episodes, we love to hear from you. Shoot us a message. Jim is at jim@jimhillmedia.com. I'm at laurenhersey.com. And that does it for today's episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.